We will be having 2 breakout groups during today's session, and there'll be a chance for a quick comfort break today as well. And our session is due to finish at 12:30 p.m. Before I hand over to Chris, I know most of you attended our first webinar on this topic, but a few quick reminders. If your business isn't already listed on englandscoast.com, please do follow the link in the chat and add your business. We have a big digital and PR campaign live at the moment, and so it's a great chance to get your business in front of new customers. Secondly, as we all get ready to reopen for the season, and some of us already reopened, England's Coast offer a free product knowledge training course for your frontline staff. So your receptionists, your waiters, your guides, or even yourself as a refresher. It takes less than an hour to complete and gives you an overview of everything there is to see and do on your part of the coast. So please share it with your staff, and it's completely free. Just visit englandscoastambassador.co.uk, and again, I'll pop the link in the chat in a few moments. Now I'm going to hand over to Chris. He's going to take us through how we create and get our new experiences to market. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Sam. Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the workshop today. Good to have you all on the call. My name is Chris Brandt. I'm from Unmissable England. Unmissable England is an organisation that supports many destination management organisations and tourist boards across the country in helping their businesses to develop brand new, immersive, bookable experiences. So it's great to be here today to tell you about what we've learned with many different small to medium-sized businesses across regional England in developing new experiences. And this is what the agenda is for this morning. So we are recording the session, so just to let you know that is happening. That means that you can also rewatch anything that you might have missed in the session today as well. So we will cover exactly what experiential tourism is all about and what makes a really good immersive experience. We'll give you all that knowledge and tell you all about how that works. And then we'll go into our first of 2 activities this morning. The first activity is identifying the stories behind your experiences, and we'll tell you about that, more about that shortly. After that session, we'll also have a short break at 5 to 11, and then we'll move into our second breakout activity where we start identifying the people, place, and the participation within your experiences. We'll be showing all those good ideas throughout the session today, but we'll also be looking at routes to market and also the benefits of being bookable. So making sure your experiences are bookable for people to book, not just here in the UK, but also around the world. There's a chance to also ask any questions and get those answered at the end of the session. And we should be finishing around about 12:30 at lunchtime. As I said, if there's any questions, anything that you're not sure about, you can pop that into the chat window, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screens. So, experiential tourism, what's it all about? Well, I really like this quote. This is the Peak District, Haddon Hall in the Peak District National Park. And in this experience, you get to go behind the scenes of a privately owned stately home in the Peak District. And you get to make bread in one of the oldest ovens in England. And that quote there, baking bread in one of the oldest ovens in England, is a memory I will never forget. And that's all what the experiences are very much about. It's about creating those memories for your guests. Something they take away is their memory of what they've done, what they've experienced in your experience. So making that bread in a stately home, in a really old kitchen, in a really old English oven, making that bread, eating it and enjoying it as well. And the whole experiential tourism very much got kind of kick-started around about 10 years ago now in Canada. And the Canadian Tourism Commission basically say, we really agree with this, a tourism product is what you buy, tourism experience is what you will remember. And it's those memories that you're creating your experience, which I'd like you to always kind of remember the remembering throughout the session today, and see what you can develop in your experience to create those memories for your guests. Now, there are 4 main components when developing any experience. And on the screen there, you've got the chart which kind of demonstrates each of them: resources, the product, the services, the local stories, and the people. So the resources are very much the coast itself. It's the harbours, it's the beaches, it's the footpaths, it's the cycle paths, it's the gardens, it's a whole mixture of different resources and assets that you have in your area to take advantage of. So we're great. We've got all those assets, those resources along England's coast, so you're off to a good start already. The second component is very much around the goods, the product that you're going to be liaising with as well. So whether that's an accommodation provider, a local attraction, an activity-based company, boat trips, a restaurant, pub, whatever it might be, they're very much the goods and the products that we have in the experience. The third element is very much around the services. You might already be an existing tour guide, or you might be working with a tour guide to actually develop and create your experience. You might be working with public transport, a cycle hire company. It's linking in those services as the third component into your experiences. And the fourth and final component is very much the local people and the local stories that you identify and bring into your experience. So that's very much about the community of the town, the village, the arts, the craft, the conservation, the history, all of those stories, bringing those into your experiences. And it's those four components that really makes a good experience. So I want you to kind of remember the remembering, but also remember these components: resources, the goods, services, and local people and stories. And what we've seen with COVID-19 is that more and more people are looking for that sense of escape, coming away from the larger tourism hotspots and the honeypots, and actually visiting and experiencing locations which were not so high up on their agenda, on their list, say before COVID-19. But saying that, back in 2019, TripAdvisor, Booking.com and many other online travel agents were already starting to report that people were moving away from those hotspots and those destinations globally, and they were actually seeing more people looking to have that sense of escapism and looking for somewhere to visit that was not, was off the beaten track basically, and not some of the honeypots and some of the well-known destinations. So that's also something to worth to think about. Because experiences very much lend themselves to taking people to those unknown places, experiencing something as a local person would know. So there's hidden gems, going off the beaten track, giving people access to places that they wouldn't normally have access to. And those tourism trends very much are about escaping the towns and cities, or maybe escaping to different parts of the town or city, or learning something new, reconnecting with nature and the great outdoors, improving one's health and well-being, feeling that sense of refreshed, as I said, going off the beaten track, and also immersing yourselves in the culture and the arts. But really importantly, sharing with friends and family, as we've all not been able to do that. But also have that sense of being able to feel that they are exploring freely, as well as supporting local businesses in all the experiences that they might do. So there's some of the current trends that we're seeing nationally, and they're things to just to remind yourselves about when developing an experience. The more of these trends that you can include in your experience, the better. So I often get asked about what makes a good experience, but also what's the difference between a classic tour and an immersive experience? Well, let me give you an example. And this is a group of 4 people visiting from Seattle in the US. And these guys have pre-booked their experience on Airbnb experiences 3-4 months before their arrival to the UK. And their trip is very much visiting Europe. They're in the UK, they're visiting France, and they're visiting Italy. And this picture was taken back in 2019, so before COVID-19. And so these guys booked on a 2.5-hour baking scones in a Cotswold cottage experience, and that retails per person at £68. So they've paid and they've booked on Airbnb experiences, and they come along for this 2.5-hour experience where they step inside a 16th century thatched cottage in the Cotswolds, which is a privately owned home. So it's not something that's normally offered to visitors or to the general public. It is a privately owned home, and that person who's hosting that experience is allowing people, visitors, to come in and do this experience through Airbnb Experiences, also other online travel agents. So you step into the cottage, you hear all the stories about the restoration work of the cottage, how it was thatched, and the thatching has been redone recently, and all the restoration building work that's happened by the owners. There's also the ancestry on that property has been done going right back to 1841. So it's all about the stories, the people that have lived there before. And then you really get into the nugget of the experience, and that's actually baking the scones. So they're not here just to eat the scones and have a cream tea. They're actually baking the scones themselves. So they're using an old family recipe, which they get presented on a recipe card, which they also get to take home. And over 50 minutes, an hour, they actually are making those scones. And then, as we know, scones take quite quick to cook in an oven. So it's not a long experience. The scones then bake, and while they're cooling down, there's a guided walk around a small Cotswold village where the cottage is located, and they visit an old 13th century church and see the remains of an old castle that Oliver Cromwell once stayed in. So there's a bit of that bigger history as well, but also the local history, visiting the local church. But again, it's if you're an international visitor or interested in history or heritage, as well as the baking aspect, it just gives your guests another angle on the experience. And also, when you come back, the cream tea, as you see in the picture, is all laid out for you with jam and cream and some tea. And your guests get to obviously eat the scones that they've made. And these scones, as they've just come out of the oven, are always nice and fluffy and still warm. So your guests always tell you that on this experience that, oh, these are the best scones I ever had, because they've not been laying around in a cafe for a long time. They're literally just out of the oven. So as I said, this experience is really popular with visitors looking to have that immersive time, that experience with local people. And I know this experience particularly well because it is actually one of my own experiences that I set up about 4 years ago to really test out experiences. And I'm lucky to live with my partner in the Cotswolds in a small thatched cottage that we have been doing up over the time. So it's nice to tell people, visitors from all over the world, about what we've done to the cottage and the restoration work, and then to have that cream tea and meet some really lovely guests from all over the world. And people are just so interested in obviously the scone aspect, but also the history aspect as well. So it's these elements very much about the people. So they're coming to meet me as a local person. I'm not necessarily an expert in baking, and I don't pretend to be. I'm not a chef or naturally or necessarily a baker. I enjoy baking. So in my marketing, I very much inform guests before booking that they're meeting me as a local person, the person that owns the cottage, and my joy and passion for baking. So don't worry if you're running an experience and you think, well, I'm not necessarily the expert. You don't need to be an expert necessarily to do and deliver your experience. You can deliver it as you, as a local person in your area. Or there might be sometimes when you actually link up with another business or somebody that is an expert. So think about who within your experience will be delivering and hosting your experience, and whether you need to bring in other people to help tell your story of your experience. So people, and then place is important. So place is where are you going to take your visitors? Where's the special access? So at the start of the workshop, we heard about the stately home in the Peak District, having that special access to a privately owned stately home and actually baking bread in an old oven. Where are you going to take your guests? Are you going off the beaten track? Are you giving access to them that's not normally accessible if they were to do if they were able to do and visit the location themselves? So it's not necessarily about being exclusive, but it's about giving them exclusive access within your experience. So only if they're doing your experience, they're accessing these places. And that third element is the participation, the activity, the hands-on activity. And that's what really makes your experience different from a classic tour, is that hands-on activity. So in this case, it's the making the scones, going on the guided walk, eating the scones. It's all of those aspects as your activity. So really think about what activities you're going to include in your experience. If you don't have an activity, then it's not a really immersive experience, and you need to have a think about how you can do that. And sometimes it can be really simple. It doesn't necessarily have to be baking, obviously. It could be that you enjoy and take people around and see wildlife, and you might do some butterfly monitoring, where you're actually really focusing on the butterflies in a natural habitat, and actually monitoring the different types of butterfly. So it doesn't have to be necessarily making or doing something in that sense. It could be something that you include as a part of a walk, or something that you're offering as well. So people, place, and participation. And you'll hear me bang on about that all morning today. And we'll start identifying within your own experience, what are those people, place, and participation elements in your experience. So here's some basically some examples of what makes a good experience, and also some case studies around the country that we've picked out for you, so you can get a really good idea about the experience. So in this case, this is very much going kayaking or paddleboarding around the Broads in the national park. And that is an expert. That is somebody who specialises in paddleboarding, but they're full of knowledge and history, and they interpret the landscape by going on, by the visitors going on the paddleboard or the kayak in that case. Food and drink included in the experience is important. Again, that's what makes an experience different from your classic tour. Food and drink, whether that's just a simple thing like going to a pub or having a tea or coffee or a lunch, it's good to include in your pricing. So this experience is priced at £45 for 4 hours. This is a 2-day experience, which is becoming more popular. This is a 2-day experience in, sorry, let me just jump back on the slides there. In Cornwall, it's £169, which includes the wild camp over, so you're camping, but you're doing a surfing lesson, and you're also doing a yoga session as well. And it's very much about enjoying that kind of wild adventure in Cornwall on the 2-day experience. And all food and drink is included in that experience. So there's no extras when you're having an experience. You're not adding food and drink on top of your experience fee. It's very much included within the price of your experience. This experience is on the South Downs, Hills, Heath, Hops and Hampers, and it tells a story of local produce across the South Downs National Park. And again, food and drink is included. This is a really reasonable price of £65 for 4 hours, with that locally sourced picnic, but also with Rich, who is the guide, your host on that experience, who again is full of the knowledge and the geography and the history and the heritage of that part of the South Downs. And he tells that story really well about the history and the geography. And that story in your experience is really important. And when we come on to our first activity, we'll start identifying the story of your experience. And it's the story that keeps all of those elements together, the people, place, and participation. So whatever your story is, whether it's about the local produce and the geography of a landscape, or if it's about making scones, you've got to come up with a story to actually keep all your experience intact, but also have those elements of people, place, and participation. And this experience also is working in collaboration with a local brewery. So actually, it's not just the host that's delivering this experience. Rich actually also links up with a local brewery as well. So they actually do a small brewery tour and tasting as a part of that experience. Which brings us on to our first activity this morning. So what we're going to do is break out into 4 different groups, and you'll be you'll have a prompt on your screen to take you into the workshop session, and you'll be greeted by your facilitator in that session. And then we'll be asking you to introduce yourselves and just tell us about the types of experiences that you're looking to develop, even if that's just a broad idea. But what we want to do is hear from you about the types of experiences that you're looking to develop. And then we're going to ask you about the types of expected stories. So this is about the history, the heritage, the geography, the produce. What's your stories in your part of the coast? So what stories could you tell through your experience? So we've heard about the baking, we've heard about interpreting the landscape. It could be about bigger history. It could be a Henry VIII experience. It could be something not necessarily about history. It could be about a story about going around a brewery and giving people a really immersive brewery tour with local food and drink included into that. So what are the expected coastal stories? What do people really know well about your part of England's coast? And then what are the unexpected stories? What are the elements that visitors might not already know about your area of the coast that they might be interested in knowing through your experience? So often what we find is that the unexpected elements of an experience really connect well with visitors. So whether you include that as a bit of a surprise element in your experience, or your experience is very much unexpected, it's off the beaten track, it's visiting a location in a completely different way and telling the story in a completely different way. What is your experience about in the sense of expected and the unexpected? So that's what we're going to be looking at in activity 1. We've got around about 25 minutes to do that. So we're now, by magic, going to appear into our breakout rooms where you'll be met and greeted by your facilitator this morning. Good. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good first activity session. I'm going to go around the rooms. I'm going to start with Sam first of all, and just find out first of all what are the stories, the expected stories, but also those unexpected stories. And I've been floating between some of the rooms this morning, and I've heard lots of different kind of really interesting stuff. Sam, how did your group get on?
Good. We actually we had a couple of ladies who had done the previous workshops. This was like a repeat for them. So we kind of went off on a bit of a tangent, I do confess. But we were talking about, we had Kent, North Devon and Northumberland. We were just talking about the amount of history and local knowledge that exists in each of those places, and the different nature and wildlife, and that perhaps the sort of expected stories might be around some of the things that those areas are famous for, like the Gulf or the wildlife or film locations. But on the unexpected stories, starting to think about things that probably your average tourist wouldn't know. In Kent, we had Stephanie's business is on an ancient highway between Canterbury and Dover, and there's a hidden marker that kind of marks the scene of a murder back in 1800s. And so Stephanie's thinking of developing a sort of family cooking experiences, and so perhaps there's a sort of horrible histories angle there around the gruesome murder, but also, as we were talking, another sort of ancient story of someone who was tried and hung and then cut down and survived and escaped to the Caribbean and ended up on a pirate ship. And, again, great for kids. They'd love that, especially if you could link in with some sort of cooking pirate-based meal or experience. So that was one of them. And then that's the other sort of unexpected things we were talking about. We went off on a tangent again around mindfulness and that sort of stopping in nature and listening to the birds and taking in the smells of the countryside, or just sort of being in the moment that perhaps don't normally take when you're on a tour. You sort of always, most sort of tours, traditional tours, you'd be rushing from one thing to the next and just seeing things, doing things, but actually stopping and taking a second to take in the environment.
Brilliant. Sound like some good ideas there. Alex, your group also had some mindfulness, some folks, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was lots of sort of thoughts around mindfulness and yoga and meditation and wellness sort of packages being pulled together. we had the Excelsior Trust from Suffolk and Olivia from e-bike company in Norfolk, which sounds like they have like a beautiful little walled garden and things that they can rent the bikes up from. Obviously, like being 5 miles from the coast, but on an e-bike, everything's so much easier, so you can get around a lot better. But yeah, we kind of just jumped ahead to talking about how to bring things together, I guess, and bring different experiences or practitioners to one place. With the sort of expected stories around the Norfolk coast were sort of everyone wants to visit because it's wide sandy beaches and quite quiet. There's been sort of more of talk of the Jurassic element of the coastline there. And the Suffolk coast, there's lower stuff being quite industrial and fishing orientated, which works well with the Excelsior tours, but they kind of want the more middle class, richer audience. And there's talk of Adnams Brewery, so there's like already sort of a few things like that that they could bring in to try and get more of an audience there. And other guest in our group was from a hotel in Brighton that will be opening of a baking school within it and a wellbeing hub for practitioners to come in and offer their therapies. So it sounds like they've already got the basis of a great package. It's just trying to think of how to get it to all come together, really.
Cool, brilliant. Some great ideas. And Francine, Shannon, who wants to go with your feedback from your breakout group this morning?
Yeah, I'm happy to go, Chris. So in our group, we were talking very much about, well, I think all the participants were saying that there really is an interest actually to develop new experiences as we're looking at sort of new markets coming to the UK, particularly sort of around the uncertainty of international travel particularly, and also those people that may have gone to cities previously but actually want to come to the countryside, and actually that really well positions the coast because people want the outdoor experience, they want the fresh air and they want the space, so that's really important. So we had some representatives from Bournemouth area, so we're saying that very much Bournemouth is known for the beach and people just often just come to the beach and that's it, but actually there's so many more stories and things to explore actually around the history of Bournemouth. It's not just about the beach, and also around sea creatures and possibly some experiences around there. So that's interesting. Then another one member of our group was from the Best Western Hotel in Morecambe, so saying that there's the Eric Morecambe statue there, which people tend to know about, but maybe there's a way that people can experience the history in a different way, and something that's more immersive. TV and films, obviously quite a popular one as well, because there's been a new series called The Bay that's been showing, so there will be a little bit more interested in the area, so actually how come up and experience that for themselves. It's also the Eden Project. There's a lot of interest happening around that as well, which is good. So yeah, I think actually kind of working on that natural history, giving people that sort of new experience. We're also talking about cycling, because the way of the roads is cycle routes. Again, that kind of getting out and enjoying fresh air and the space in the countryside. So and then we're also talking about there's some really good sort of connections to the war, actually. People associate war on the sort of French side with D-Day, but there's a little train. There's a really cool microbrewery and microbrewery car, which is actually a bar, so something a little bit quirky there. I've written down Higher Gladys. I'm not quite sure what I was referring to there, Linda, but I did write that down. But also there's a few connections to Laurel and Hardy, so that's actually one of the more unexpected stories that could be delivered. The Day of the Sin, Linda was talking about that in our group, about a fictitious pirate, and there could be an opportunity to learn a clog dance, so something completely different, dressing up with Morris dancers and that sort of thing. So but yeah, lots of great ideas, and I think there's definitely some sort of new unexpected stories that could be capitalized on.
Yeah, thanks for everybody's contribution in the groups. We'll be rejoining those groups in a little bit, but just before we do that, I thought it'd be quite useful just to go over some of my top tips really in creating an experience. And we've been talking about the story, so that unexpected story, but also the expected as well. Your story, is key. So whatever that story might be, it might be kind of a big history story. It might be about the geology or the produce of an area. Whatever that story is, come up with that story and stick to that story and tell that story well. And like all good stories, they have a good start, middle, and end. So make sure that's told throughout your experience. But don't be afraid when you've got these little nuggets of stories that you want to include in your experience, and it might not necessarily have complete relevance to your overall theme of your experience, but don't be afraid to include them if there's some local history or there's some information that you think your guests will be quite interested to know about. So the story at 1. At 2, guests get hungry, and we're going to come on to this bit next in our next breakout session. So again, this is where you include food and drink offering into your experience, and where possible, it's good to include locally produced and locally sourced food and drink, because that will help tell your story as well of your local area. And unlike classic tours, food and drink, whatever it might be, is included into that price. So you're not having any awkward moment when you're taking guests to a pub and you're expecting them to get their wallet out to pay for their dinner or their pint of beer, etc. It's all paid for. So that's when you want to start negotiating for your experiences with a local pub or a bakery or whatever the provider of the food might be, to get down that price. So you actually I've come up with a special agreement of a wholesale price to purchase that food and drink included in your experience. And at 3, as we've been hearing, that unexpected element, whatever it might be, include something for your guests that have a surprise element. So this is Lake Windermere in the Lake District, where it's on a range of patrol boats. And when this experience was first developed, before COVID-19, the experience is very much about spending the day with a national park ranger, but the unexpected, the surprise element of that experience is that you actually get to drive the boat. So you really are the national park ranger for that day. So that's a really nice unexpected element, that you are actually driving the boat and you are actually being the ranger instead of just spending the day with the ranger. So however big or small your unexpected element is, it's good to include, but also include the expected, especially things like the quintessentially English and British things. Don't be afraid to do those things, especially right now after COVID-19, because as we're coming out of slowly coming out of the pandemic, people want to re-engage with some of these really friendly and comfy things. So like having fish and chips on the beach, or a cream tea, visiting an old English pub. Those kind of things are really nice to do, and they're also going to obviously work really well with the international market when we start opening back up our borders around the world for people to come back and experience England's coast. And at 5, keep it simple. Whatever your experience is, don't overload it with too many elements. And also, every experience will be different, because if you're running these kind of things already, you'll know that every group or every individual that you have on your experience is always different. So you might have a really quiet group and not talking very much, and you're actually speeding up your experience to get through it quicker. And then therefore you might need to add in something extra or spend a bit longer. So being flexible is good. Or you might have a really chatty group and it's just taking really long time to get to A to B. So you need to just be flexible in the setup of your experience, and sometimes play with the timing, etc. It's also good to be flexible if you want to work with the travel trade in the future as well. We always say it's good to be mindful if you want to work with the trade and for them to work with you and developing your experience. It's good to have that flexibility in your experience. This is just another example of really good experiences up in the Peak District, so well away from the coast, but it's a good experience to demonstrate. On this experience in the national park, you get to go caving around the caves, but you actually get to mine your own piece of the Blue John stone. So the Blue John stone, this is the only type of that stone that can be found anywhere in the world, so it's really special. So on this experience, you do the mining, you do the caving, but not only that, you actually get to polish your own piece of jewelry. Sorry, I've given it away. You get to mine, cave, and then polish your piece of stone, and then you get to make it into a piece of jewelry, which you get to take home. So you get to take that piece of stone, which is actually much smaller than your hand, actually, in that picture, small piece of stone, but also you get to make that piece of jewelry as well. So it's really hands-on. So when we talk about participation in a moment on the breakout session, we're looking for as many activities that you can include in your experience. These are hands-on activities, and again, there might be big things, they might be very small things. It could be using your senses and going for a walk. It doesn't necessarily have to be always making and doing these things, but as many elements of participation you include in your experience, the better. Before we go into our second breakout activity, we're just going to have a very short tea break, and we'll be back here in 5 minutes. So do grab yourself tea or coffee, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. So we'll be back at 11:05, and then we'll go straight into our breakout session where we start identifying the people, the place, and the participation in your experiences. To rejoin the room, and then we're go around the rooms just to see what each group came up with. We're looking at the people, place, and the participation within your ideas of your new experiences. Sam, how did your group get on in the second activity?
Hi, yeah, we kind of, well, that's my fault, we went off on a few tangents. We started off on the right track. We were talking about the cooking experiences and looking at making them for the family audience, and Stephanie was saying they'd tried an experience with a local bird observatory who, as a sort of value add, as a trial, had come and taken the kids doing the cooking classes out on a nature walk, and it had been really successful. But we moved on to talking about accommodation and how, if you're on the experience provider side, how you get your experience in front of accommodation, and vice versa. If you're the accommodation, how do you link into the experiences? How do you add that value into your product? So it was quite a sort of long conversation about that, and we talked about the value of different agencies and how you distribute your product, and the value that, don't see it as a commission, but actually it's a marketing fee essentially. And then we kind of moved on to talking about pricing, and again thinking about pricing for different audiences, and even the same experience could be priced differently depending on who it's targeted at, and that's okay. There was a very both Stephanie and Dawn very concerned about making sure that they were giving customers value for money, and we sort of talked about what that means for different audiences, and don't be afraid to price accordingly.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're testing these new experiences, then now is if you're running these in the summer, then it's a very different world out there to the normal world, really, because obviously it's just a domestic UK consumer out there at the moment booking your experiences. If you're going down that consumer route, you've not got the international market, so the price point is really important there. On average, domestic visitors, consumers are looking to spend around about £40 to £65 for a 4-hour experience. If you're looking to attract more of an international visitor in the future, then look to North America, for example, who are happy to spend a bit more, over £100 mark in that same kind of experience. But because they're doing that bigger trip, they're happy to spend a bit more money, and maybe even leave a tip on top of that. So it's thinking about who your audience is, and what if you're doing these in the summer and you're testing them out. Also test them out when we do open up fully to the international visitors as well, because you might get a completely different response as well. So pricing absolutely it's meant to kind of focus on. Brilliant. Francine, how did your group get on?
Yeah, really good. We were going through sort of everyone's ideas for experiences, and how you would develop that, looking at the sort of the people and the place, and getting off the beaten track and those exclusive elements. So I was talking to Rosemary about who offers sort of paint your own pottery activities in Bournemouth. So we're having a bit of a chat about that, as how that could be expanded. They've also got a cafe there on site, so good opportunity to develop the food and drink offer as well. She did say that Rosemary said that potentially could look at something in the evening, which they're not currently doing. So again, that would maybe give more exclusive access for a group to come and do that experience. We're also talking with Carol from City Cruises about potentially how that both experiences could maybe work together, maybe incorporating a cruise, sort of a sightseeing element, and then actually then going to have a go at painting the pottery. So probably quite a good conversation there, really, in terms of developing that experience. Yeah, so that was good. And then obviously going back sort of north to Morecambe, the Best Western Hotel there. There's a sun deck terrace, so lends itself amazingly well for sort of food and drink overlooking the bay, sort of, you know, maybe a late afternoon or early evening experience there. And what we were saying is that there's a gin bar at the hotel that's currently not being used for an experience, so a potential for a sort of gin tasting afternoon experience, which would be good. And it's actually, and this is a really important point, it's all about sort of connecting and supporting with local businesses. So what they were saying is that, you know, you would actually be using gins that literally just down the road on the promenade on Morecambe. So you're actually using those local produce and supporting those businesses. But it's a great thing because those gins are actually based on local monuments and points of interest. So actually that when we go back to actually developing those stories, you can actually really bring that across within that particular experience. So that would be something brand new as well. I know we were talking about all sorts of other possible experiences too, sort of, you know, hop picking and beer tasting and vineyards. So currently things that aren't happening, but we're just sort of saying you need to find those people that would actually be able to, you know, actually go forward with those experiences. But what worries me was saying, going back to the pottery, is that you know, you're not maybe the expert in that field, but you know, you have got that local knowledge and you can still lead a group in experience. And actually it's more about developing that memory for that visitor, actually then just having a go at something, making something that they can then take away with them. And that's what you were saying before, Chris. You might not always be an expert, but you can still deliver that experience and give that kind of, you know, local knowledge to the group or visitor.
Absolutely, yeah. It's often in these workshop sessions, and individuals or businesses say, "Oh, I'm not an expert, blah, 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 but I do know this bit, that bit." And it's like, yeah, well, you can. That's the whole point of an experience. You know, these are not workshops; they're not courses. People, you know, they're coming to learn and do, but then it's not an educational approach. So don't be afraid for you to be the expert in a passion or an interest that you might have. Brilliant. Sounds an awful lot covered in your breakout there session, Francine. And Alex, how did your group get on?
Hey, yeah, good. I think we were talking through some various ideas on how to put things together to make experiences, and Olivia's e-bikes in Norfolk sounded great. That you could came up with ideas of maybe going to like a vineyard, cycling to like a foraging thing, and there's loads of samphire on the coast there, so whether you could like either forage samphire or buy it from someone. Apparently there's a lot of people on the side of the roads there that sell it and stuff like that, and then go back to the walled garden and have a meal prepared that involved the ingredients that you foraged or something like that. Or sort of day tours where you could stay at the property, hire your bike and have like a planned itinerary with like a place to eat booked, so you have like a map of where you're going to go that day, and then come back and have an activity in the garden upon your return or something. And with the Excelsior tour, Abby was saying, we were talking about the history of the boat and the history of the skippers, and that hasn't really been developed into a sort of part of the tour yet, which could be really nice for people to get to know where the boat's history and where it's been and the people that have sailed it in the past. There's also we're talking about elements of surprise, and there's the chance to like climb the rigging on the boat, which could be really nice, and the thought of having maybe fish and chips somewhere afterwards, just bringing those sort of traditional English sort of coastal experiences into a package as well, which would be quite nice.
Brilliant. Some really great ideas all over really. So it'd be really interesting to see how you go off and develop these further. So let's go back to our presentations. Bear with me for 1 second, and we'll rejoin our slide deck. So some top tips for you to remember. It's the people, place and participation. So we've got a toolkit we'll be sharing with you shortly, and that toolkit actually includes a lot around the people, place and participation. So use that as almost a toolkit for design it. Use it as a toolkit for designing your experience, but keep to those people, place and participation as a guide for you in developing your experience, and come up with the story or the stories of your experience and stick to those stories as well. And include something that's expected, but also the unexpected is also good to include. And keep it simple and be flexible. I can't say that enough, because sometimes businesses overcomplicate things, and they don't need to be complicated in an experience. Sometimes that kind of middle, start and end of an experience is a good way to keep it simple and have that flexible approach. So we're looking for experiences around England's coast that happen all year round, really. So many experiences currently run in the high season, for example, but there is real opportunity, especially post-COVID-19 restrictions, that we have experiences around the coast that are actually in the lower season. And there's particularly, there's audiences and markets that really look for these type of experiences and traditionally visit England at these times. But also there's ways to actually market your experience in the in the lower season. So you might have an experience that is more geared around the summer market, but you might actually want to theme it up and actually give a winter version of that. So an example of that could be that fish and chips adventure, and then you rebrand it and market it as a wild, wet and windy experience in the winter. So it's no surprise to your guests that they're going to get a bit wet on that boat going out, and it might be a bit chilly. So actually play up to the weather conditions and actually make them a feature of your experience. Don't be afraid of that, because remember, people are looking to go off the beaten track. They're looking to escape. They're looking to get out of their homes and houses. So that the lower season is still a good opportunity. But again, you might just want to adapt these experiences as well. Also use the festive time as well around Christmas to actually play up to festivities and actually create experiences around that time, which you can start, obviously having those experiences from early November into early January. So a festive themed experience version of your experience could be a good fit. So a word about the kind of markets that Britain, England usually attracts internationally in the lower season, particularly between January and March, is very much the Irish, the Republic of Ireland, the Italians and the Spanish. They travel to England between January and March, typically, and also between July and September. So just to, again, as we open up internationally in the future, they are the markets you might be interested in targeting. And there's ways to do that when working with the international travel trade, which we'll come on to shortly. So experiences for all seasons is something that is good to have, because we know that people are looking for these types of experiences all year round. And we've got evidence of how people are influenced through booking their holiday. This data from Visit Britain back in 2019 really demonstrates how people are booking their experiences. You've got the two columns there. First, the domestic market, and then the inbound, the international market on the second column. And in the orange, you can see that in the yellow, 22% are choosing their experience first, and then they find the destination domestically. So they're looking for a seal watching experience, and then they end up going to the Norfolk coast, for example. So they're not necessarily going to hunting down for an experience on the Norfolk coast. They're looking for that theme or that kind of type of experience first. And I think we're only going to see that percentage grow, especially from the domestic market. People looking for those different special experiences, getting off the beaten track. They might be Googling or searching an online travel agent to find those types of experiences before they're actually typing in the destination name. So in comparison to that, 37% in 2019 chose the destination because of that experience that they're doing, and 41% of the domestic market chose the destination first, and then they found their experience. So all that data there is from 2019, and obviously people's behaviour is going to be quite different in 2021 and 2022, but just to demonstrate really how people are, and how visitors are or have been booking. But we also know that 65% in 2019 of the domestic market were actually booking an experience before leaving home. So that 65 weren't waiting to get to a destination to book an experience. They were actually doing that when they were booking up their holiday. So that only shows the importance of bookability and having your experience bookable online, so that your visitors can actually book these way before they're traveling. And there's ways to obviously do that as we come on to now. So one of their ways is the travel trade, whether that's domestic or international travel trade. And the logos on the screen, which you might recognize a couple of them, these are tour operators or DMCs, destination management companies. These are just a few. There are many, many more out there. And England's Coast works with many of these different brands, and they actually sell and kind of and educate the travel trade about products like your experiences to these different companies. And these companies will specialize in different markets or different countries. They're focused on different segments, different age groups, and different people. So this is just one way to market and to take bookings for your experiences. So again, if you are looking in the future, once you're fully set up, it's a conversation you might want to have with England's Coast or your local destination management company, and doing so and actually speak about travel trade to have that regular income, that regular booking through travel trade. So that's one avenue to investigate. The other one, which is a little bit easier and quicker to do and something you can do yourselves, is the online travel agents, OTAs. So this is another way you can have your experiences bookable online. Again, these are some of the brands, the logos on the screen there that you might recognize. There are many more as well. These are just to give you a highlight of some of the online travel agents out there. So if I take you through these one by one, give you an idea of how they work, the target audiences, but also importantly, the commission, because as Sam said earlier on, the commission is very much your marketing cost. So think about it as that. You're paying that percentage for that company, that online travel agent, to take your product and take it to market and put it in front of the people that it's suitable for. So that's not you having to do that. You're not having to print off loads of leaflets or put an expensive advertising campaign online worldwide or nationally. They're doing that on your behalf. So that's where you pay that commission. But you're also paying for that booking platform feature as well to manage your bookings. So TripAdvisor, obviously well known for the reviews and hotels and booking restaurants and those kind of things. In the last 3 or 4 years, become really popular experiences. So TripAdvisor Experiences is now #1 in the world for booking experiential tourism experiences, products. So we've seen a real growth in the UK over the last 2 or 3 years. They, on average, are around about 25% commission. So that's the commission you will take from per booking. But they will, they're obviously very much a global online travel agent, and they will give you those bookings through that as well, connected into to the reviews. Unmissable England is the company I work for, and we're a new online travel agent specialising in regional experiences in England. And our commission is set at 15% if you're a business, and 10% if you're not for profit. And again, that goes right back into the marketing. And Unmissable England is targeted at domestic, but also will be international visitors. Expedia is a big and well-known brand, again, well-known for hotels and flights. And in the last 4 or 5 years, they've been trying to promote and take on board experiences. Not as big as TripAdvisor and other online travel agents, but again, they have aspirations to become bigger, and it's just one to look out for. Again, their commission is around about 25%. Get Your Guide is another experience online travel agent that works on tours and experiences, probably a little bit more leaning towards the classic tour option at the moment. Their commission is negotiable, and it is per business. So they'll look at the size of your business, the operations of your business, and your potential in actual bookings as well, and they'll give you a commission rate. They're well known in elsewhere across Europe, but also in North America as well. There's also platforms like Bionk that will link into DMO websites. So DMO is Destination Management Organization. So your likes of Visit Cumbria, Visit Dorset, what have you, and also England's coast, of course. They will be working with a platform to actually link in experiences. And again, there will be a small commission through that as well. And I'm sure Sam can give us an update on the website of England's coast at the end of the session this morning. Airbnb, again, it's one of the big players, just like TripAdvisor in experiential tourism. And Airbnb Experiences, which launched around about 8 years ago now in North America, in the US, has really grown. And more currently, it's been really popular for online experiences during the pandemic. So their commission rate is completely and utterly set at 20%. But that 20% will also include all that marketing and the booking feature, but it will also include your insurance, which is really good if you are if you're not running these experiences necessarily as a business, but you want to run them as independently. So part of that 20% is the advertising and getting your customers, but also will cover you for most things for the insurance as well. There are some words of warning around Airbnb. They do look for exclusivity. However, they have said recently that they might be relaxing that, but they're looking for only Airbnb experience visitors on an Airbnb experience. So if you're planning to have your experiences on the England's Coast website, TripAdvisor, as well as Airbnb, then Airbnb are not really going to like that. So something to bear in mind. It might be an option that you only actually have some of your days of your experiences on some platforms, on some online travel agents, and the rest on, say your Tuesday of your experience, or every Tuesday of the month is your Airbnb day, and that's how you get around it. Other word of warning around Airbnb that I get asked a lot is minimum numbers. So Airbnb will ask you and make you basically run at a minimum of one person on your experience. Obviously, that's quite a big problem for many businesses. However, I would say from my own experience, even if you do get one at the beginning, that's not necessarily always going to be one throughout that. And actually, that one person booking on your experience is also a review, and reviews are really important on sites like Airbnb. But it's something to bear in mind with on Airbnb, because it is the only one that will make you do that. Booking.com is actually not particularly great for experiential tourism at the moment, and we haven't seen much growth in bookings with experiences. But however, if you run tours, there are some on there as well. Again, 25% the commission on there. Visit Britain Shop is the official tourism board website shop for Britain. That links into a platform called TXGB, Tourism Exchange Great Britain, which is also a platform that some of the destination management organisations are also working with. And again, you can onboard your experiences onto that. TXGB will take 2.5% on top of how much Visit Britain Shop will be taking. And again, that's around about 10 to 20% as well, depending on your experience. TUI Amusement is, obviously many of us recognise that TUI brand. They again are particularly popular with attractions. So if you run an attraction, you might find it better to have your experiences on TUI Amusement, as they particularly target that attraction-based consumer. So as I said, that's just a whistle-stop tour of the world of online travel agents, or as we know them, OTAs. There are many more out there. We advise that you work with a couple of them, as it's good to have your experiences in a few shop windows instead of just relying on one. So you might pick, one or two that works for you. Many of these don't interconnect their booking systems. So, for example, Airbnb is completely standalone, but there are more and more sites that are and online platforms that are linking together. So do your research, and our toolkits that we'll provide to you will actually have a really good checklist of how online travel agents interconnect with each other or not, and give you that full list of those commissions as well. So you've got all that information up front. And this is just a chart of how that distribution network really works. So you at the top as the experience provider, you onboard your experience. That means you add your experience. And there are these 4 columns at the top there. So in the dark blue there, you might already have a booking system, for example, like Fair Harbor or Treksoft. Again, there's many more out there. And actually those booking systems, especially if you're an accommodation provider, might already link into sites like Expedia or TripAdvisor or Viator, Get Your Guide. So it's worth looking at those booking systems that you might already be paying for and actually see how they might connect, as well as actually making sales through your own website, which again is another avenue. And we really do encourage that you think about actually having actually selling experiences on your own website, because there's no commission, mostly because if you're doing using a booking tool that's either free or it's got a lower percentage. But it's good that you're doing your own marketing, maybe through social media, Facebook and Instagram, etc. TXGB, I mentioned earlier, Tourism Exchange Great Britain. That's the platform from Visit England, Visit Britain. And again, that does connect into some more accommodation-led booking systems. And then there's ways to take that through to Expedia, TripAdvisor, Viator in America, etc., and also interconnects into some destination management websites as well. Beyonc is another one which links into the destination management websites, as well as making sales on your own website. Unmissable England is an online travel agent itself, so it will market the experiences as well as putting a widget on your own website. But we're more and more working with DMOs at the moment actually to launch a new platform as well. So there's a change in landscape all the time, so it's worth always checking in to make sure your experiences are in the best places. You might prefer to go direct to an online travel agent, so like direct Airbnb experiences or Get Your Guide. There's a few others on that list there, Tours by Locals, for example. You might choose to actually go direct and have them bookable in one place. But my best advice is to do your research, look for what England's coast has to offer, because they have a very attractive offer with their website and their marketing. And I think, obviously definitely an opportunity and an avenue to take, and then see what else there is out there when it comes to taking your experiences to market. Also provided in our toolkit, which you'll get copies of, is our pricing structure. So this will help you list all your costs and also start to see how you'll start making, very importantly, your profit. So on the columns there, you'll see the time, the cost, but also per person, also per a group. And it's good to have in mind how you're going to actually deliver your experiences. Are you looking for individual customers to book with you? So if you get, like, for example, on Airbnb, you get one person, or that might be one person, and then you might have 4 people booking. Or are you saying that you only will take private groups? So for example, 4 people, 6 people, or 8 people, but they're booking as a private group. So you've got 2 options. You've got the mixed group, where you get multiple bookings for that one experience, or you've got a private group. And actually, sometimes you can do both. So you can actually list your experience, mixed groups and private, as 2 separate products, 2 separate experiences. And it's kind of working out what's the best solution for you and for your business. So this pricing structure will go through all the details of insurance, licensing, food, drink, transportation, your time that you need to cost your own time, especially if you are a business. You need to work out how much time you're putting into it, but also count the time in actually managing the bookings and speaking to guests before and after travel. Make sure you're actually thinking about how much time it takes to actually onboard and add your experiences to the different online travel agents. So you actually have a proper pricing, cost structure of how much it's costing. So lots of advice and tips in that toolkit to come. And here's our checklist, if you like, on some of our top tips when you're signing up to an online travel agent, things to look out for. Make sure you have your relevant insurance licensing and any certificates you might need in actually running your experience. So if you're not already, you need to make sure you've got the relevant public liability insurance to run your experience. And if you're having any, you're making food or drink on premises, obviously you need to make sure you have the relevant licensing. So speaking to your local district or unitary council is the first place to call to go to find out, make sure that you have got any relevant licensing. If you're transporting guests from A to B, you will need to speak to your local council again about any licensing. Every council does vary. Some councils won't allow you to do that unless you have a kind of a taxi type license, which obviously is not really what you're looking to do. There are ways around that by using e-bikes, as we've heard, by using public transport, also hiring a minibus. So that will help, as it's not a regular thing. Some district councils are quite relaxed about that licensing of transportation, as long as it's not the main part or feature of your experience. So if you're taking people in a vehicle from A to B to C to D to E, that's very much like kind of taxiing in many eyes. If you're just picking up your guests like you might do already if you're an accommodation providers from the local bus stop or the train station, then that's different. But I would definitely seek guidance from your own unitary or district councils. And again, if you're doing anything with food and drink, even if that's not preparing it yourselves, it's good to have a food hygiene certificate, which you can either do for free online or up to £25 as well. And there's many sites out there for you to have a look at, but it's good just to have that on your listing on the online travel agents, just to say you've met all those requirements. Make sure you read all the terms and conditions when you're signing up to any booking platform or online travel agent. Make sure you're fully aware of what you're signing up to. So take the time to read this. It's really important. Some online travel agents will allow you to have your own cancellation policy. So for example, you may choose to cancel 7 days before the experience takes place if you've got no one on it, or it might actually cancel an hour before. So make sure you sign up to the agreement that you're happy with. Some you adopt their cancellation policy, some you actually onboard your own cancellation policy. So again, this is very much about choosing the right type of online travel agent that's suitable and accommodates how you work as a business and how your experiences work. And have a pricing plan that includes the service fees, those commission rates. Don't look at them as an extra or an add-on. Include them in your costs. In that costing exercise, put whatever it is, 20%, 10%, 5%, whatever it might be, include that in up front so you're fully onboarded basically with that commission. And finally, have availability. Availability, visibility, and the more experiences that you can offer, the better. There are kind of some quirky and top tips around that. So many businesses I speak to are quite small, and they would love to deliver more and more experiences, but quite frankly, this is an add-on to what they do in their business, therefore they can't be offering it every day. But you might have the intention to run it once or twice a week, or 3 or 4 times a month. And what you can do on many of these online travel agents, on the OTAs, is actually over onboard your experiences. So you put on more dates than you actually plan to deliver. And then as soon as you get someone actually biting and actually booking your experience, you then remove those other dates where you have no bookings, and then you focus your customers on the dates where you've got the 1 booking or the 2 people booking or the group, what have you. So that's one way to do it. So over onboard your availability and then watch that availability, really important, because obviously you don't want to be running it 5 times a week or what have you. As soon as you've got the booking and the booking comes through on email or you're alerted, then that's when you might want to take down the other dates or times and then focus on that. That's one way of doing it. But have availability. Many of these online travel agents will work and will actually only list your experience if you've got availability. So you won't find it on a website. It's not just a listing, it's actually a bookable experience. So there's some top tips in there, and again, as I mentioned, you will be getting a copy of our toolkit, which has all this information in for you to take away as well. So we're going to come on to our questions and answers shortly. So if you have got a question you'd like to ask me or England's Coast, then feel free to join our Q&A in just a moment. But some takeaway items really, have a look at that toolkit, continue forming your story and identify your 3 Ps, that's your people, place and participation. Cost out your experience, work out what the costs are, and really importantly, get some good photography and film. Because whatever the method you'll be advertising and promoting and taking bookings, you'll need to obviously sell those experiences, whether it's on your own website, Airbnb, TripAdvisor, what have you. It's good to have that photography, and it's been really hard obviously over the last year or so because we've not been able to do that. But one idea you can do is obviously when you're testing out these experiences with friends and family before you actually start commercially running them, get a friend along or a professional photographer, whatever you can do, and actually get them to take pictures as well in your experience and your testing experience. And then you can use those pictures and those short films in your advertising and on the online platforms like England's Coast, Unmissable England, TripAdvisor, etc. And of course, make sure if you haven't already, sign up to England's Coast and keep up to date with any travel trade work they might be doing in the future and any other future campaigns as well. So you're actually keeping up to date with them. That's where our kind of our presentation ends there. This is a chance now for you to ask any questions to me, to Sam, to the team at England's Coast, and anything you would like to kind of find out more about or something that might not make sense. There's no silly questions. Just come up and just unmute yourself before, or if you're not confident talking on camera, then you can always pop it into the chat feature on the right hand side of your screen. Any questions? Sam, oh, here we go. We've got one question. We've got a hand up from Princess.
Hey, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, thanks a lot. I'm really sorry I actually missed the first part. I had trouble connecting, so I hope this hasn't been asked before.
It doesn't matter if it has.
You were talking about the experiences in Airbnb, and I'm more or less familiar with them. And I've seen that there is people offering live tours that are, then people can participate live, in real time. Do you know if there is other platforms that do also experiences that are pre-recorded?
Do you mean like online experiences?
Online experiences.
Yeah, no, Airbnb, they launched that during the pandemic. I'm not familiar with any others apart from people doing things through Facebook, Instagram, through social media. That's one avenue, and obviously that's it's a cheaper alternative. But Airbnb are kind of really focusing on that online experience, and who know, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19, in the future, and how we all behave. So they are continuing that online experience feature, but I'm not familiar with any other online travel agents doing that currently.
Okay, great. And just one other thing, can I just see the checklist again, if you don't mind? I just didn't have the time to write them all down.
You'll get a copy of all of the slide deck. Everybody on the call will get a copy of the slide deck, and also which
great.
More information in there as well. So don't worry.
Thank you very much.
And also, Princess, this session is being recorded as well, so you can catch up and watch at the start.
Oh, fantastic! Thanks a lot, Chris.
That's okay. Sam, did you want to just talk about England's Coast and distribution and the website and marketing opportunities?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. So the England's Coast site, for those of you that aren't familiar or aren't listed, I think a number of you are actually. is funded by the Discover England Fund, or was funded by the Discover England Fund up until the end of March. And so it's free for any business to sign up to. So it's a simple process, takes about 5 minutes. My only top tip would be to make sure that you have your landscape image ready to go, because that's probably the trickiest part of it. And it's just a simple process to add your business onto the website. As part of the work that we do, we promote England's coast across all of Europe. So to the Germans, Dutch, French, Spanish, and Italian markets. And we also work, as Chris mentioned, with travel trade around the world. So be that ground handlers who deal in global operations, or big operators like TUI in Germany, who are probably one of our best tour operators in terms of bringing volumes of people over to the UK from Germany. So we'll pop the link in the chat. If you haven't already added your business, then please do. But as I mentioned earlier, as part of the project, we also offer other facilities. So we do online product knowledge training that's for your frontline staff. We have the toolkit that will help you sort of take the steps from this workshop into the next stages that we'll share with everybody. And we also share on our website a lot of research and data. So if you're not sure which markets to look at, then please check out our website, and you'll see lots of information on there on different domestic markets that we see as growth markets for the coast. So for example, millennials, or the adventure and outdoor market, or cultural tourists, markets that we believe will travel year round to the coast in England, which is important for many businesses. But also international markets. So again, why we picked those European markets, what makes them right for the coastal product, and how best to adapt the product for those different markets. So that's a bit of background on England's coast. I'm happy to take any questions from anyone, or if anyone's thought of any other questions for Chris. No.
That's good. I think we've had a smaller group this morning, so as it hopefully enabled more people to ask questions throughout the session, especially in those breakout sessions. So feel free to, if you've got a question, jump in now. If not, as I said, you'll get copies of the slide deck and the toolkit as well. So there's a lot covered in there as well as a recap. But I'm looking forward to seeing all these new experiences hopefully developed over the next few months and things like that. So it'd be really exciting to see what you go away and start creating.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. Chris, any final thoughts before we wrap up? We'll let you all get on with lunch.
It sounds like go on with lunch. Yeah. No, I think it's great. I think I've heard some really good experiences, and the best experience is when you can describe it in just a sentence. Of what it is, and I've heard a couple of those today, and I think, yeah, that's a product, that's an experience that creates those kind of memories. And I think, I think I think there's some real gems.
Wow, great. Thank you, Chris, for today's session. And thank you to our moderators, Francine, Alex, and Sharon, for helping too. As Chris mentioned, we'll share the slides, and we'll be sharing the toolkit very shortly that will help you sort of do those next steps. My key takeaways from today: trust yourself. You are the expert. Don't be afraid to tell your story, but keep it simple and focus on what you enjoy and know. And of course, remember those key elements of people, place, and participation. We would love to capture your feedback from today. I popped a link in the chat, but we'll also send that round to attendees afterwards. It literally takes 2 minutes. I'd be very grateful if you could complete that form. Helps us with our project funding evaluation. My final thing really is to stay in touch as you develop these experiences, or if you want further help, please just get in touch. We're at the end of an email, and we would love to help you on this journey. It doesn't end here, hopefully, and I can't wait to see all of the new products come to market. So I'm very much looking forward to cooking in Deal at some point soon, and I'm sure when I hear about all the others, that too. All that remains for me to say is thank you, and I can't wait to see your products come to life. And thanks everyone for your time today.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.